Hey, what is going on, guys? RZ Stealth here, and in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the top lane tier list for patch 8.22. So if we just get right into the tier 1s for this patch, to start it off here is going to be Victor. Now, Victor did get nerfed in this patch. For top lane Victor though, it didn't really affect him too much. The way that they nerfed Victor in this patch more so affected mid lane Victor than it did top lane Victor, because number one, top lane Victor, the reason to why he's strong is not because of his ultimate, so the ultimate nerfs didn't really hurt top lane Victor at all. And then the Q nerf to him, yes, it does mean that he's not going to be able to bully as hard in the laning phase, but he's still going to be able to spam out his Q in lane. He's still going to be able to get a ton of klepto procs in lane, generate a lot of gold, and the matchups that he was able to bully in previous patches, he's still going to be able to bully them in this patch, just to a little bit of a lesser extent. If for some reason you are unfamiliar with this Victor top lane, the reason to why it's so strong is because you go for a Q max, you go for a Q upgrade first, and your Q is on a very short cooldown, especially once you get 40% CDR, so it just allows you to spam that out, get a ton of klepto procs, bully the opponent in the laning phase, and you're just going to have priority pretty much in every single lane. You're going to be able to do whatever you want, and once you do get to your Iceborne Gauntlet and you finish your first Hex Core, there's very few other champions that can actually deal with you in the 1v1. If you are someone who's having a hard time against Victor right now in the top lane, there are definitely a few answers to him. Victor does tend to struggle against champions that can jump right onto him and do a lot of burst damage very quickly before he can plant down his W and kite you out. So someone like Orelia, Aatrox, Renekton, even Akali can do pretty well into the Victor top lane. During the first few levels, you do still have to respect Victor. In almost every single matchup, he is going to be able to win the level 1 and even the level 2, but when you're playing someone like Renekton or Orelia, once you do hit that level 3, you can look to go for an all-in on him, and if he isn't super proficient on the champion and he can't kite you out very well, then you are still going to be able to have some good success against this pick for 822. So next up here is going to be Urgot. Now, Urgot's been a pretty staple S tier top laner for the past few patches now. He's still a great pick in this patch. Time War Tonic did get a nerf in this patch a little bit, but it didn't really affect champions that were taking it in previous patches, and if it did, they're just going for something different in this patch. But for Urgot, he's the same as he was in previous patches, still going for the Unsealed Spellbook, still a great laning champion, a really good blind pick top laner. So if you're looking for someone that you can play into almost every single matchup and at least go even in lane, then Urgot is going to be a great pick for you in this patch. And then next up here, similar to Urgot, Sion is still a great top lane pick for 822. He's also one of the better blind pick top laners, so you don't have to worry too much about getting countered when playing Sion. He's got a pretty solid laning phase against most top lane picks, and he's the best tank top laner that you can play right now. So if you get autofill top lane especially, or if you're just picking up top lane, then Sion's definitely a champion I would recommend giving a shot, because he's just pretty easy to execute, got a ton of CC in his kit, and you're not really going to lose lane a ton with this pick. And then one thing worth mentioning about the rune setup and the build on Sion for this patch is that you can switch it up depending on the situation. So if you're in a lane to where you're going to be auto attacking a lot and you're going to be able to proc Grasp, then I would take Grasp instead of Glacial Augment. If you are in a lane though to where you're not looking to trade with autos a ton, if you're in like a range matchup and you're not really going to be able to get into auto range, then just take the Glacial Augment. That is going to be the better setup in that situation. So you should be switching up your runes on Sion this patch depending on the matchup. So making her way up into the S tier for this patch is going to be Orelia. Now, Orelia in my mind has been on the borderline of an S tier top laner over the past few patches, but with Victor becoming a very strong top lane pick and with Sion also being played a ton right now, I've moved Orelia up into S tier for this patch because she's just a really good pick against the Victor. She also does great against Sion, and she's overall just a pretty solid pick right now against a lot of the most picked top laners. Orelia is definitely a champion that you need to know what you're doing on her in order to succeed though. You're not just going to pick up Orelia right away and start popping off on the champion. If played well, this champion has some of the best carry potential for any top laner in the game, but if you're average at her or if you just haven't played her a ton, then there's definitely other top lane picks that I would recommend prioritizing for this patch. And then for the rune setup on Orelia right now, still run Conquer as your keystone, but for your secondary runes, taking the Resolve tree as your secondary now instead of Inspiration is what most players are doing after the Time War tonic changes. Just going for the Bone Plating and the Second Wind seems to be the most consistent right now, and it seems to be what's doing best on a lot of these top lane picks for this patch. So Jax, one of the strongest, if not the strongest bruiser top laner for 8.22, has gotten stronger even over the past few patches. We saw Essence Reaver get buffed last patch. That item right now is doing great on Jax, slotted in usually as his second core item. You still want to go for Tiamat into Trinity Force, and then grabbing your Essence Reaver after that just makes you insane in the side lane. There's very few top lane champions that can deal with you in the side lane if you know how to play a good Jax. And then the same goes for Jax that went for Orelia as for secondary runes for 8.22. With the changes to Inspiration in this patch, it's just not doing as great on champions like Orelia and Jax right now, and Bone Plating and Second Wind seems to just be doing best for 8.22. And then to round out the S tier champs for 8.22 is going to be Darius. So Darius, as long as the meta stays relatively the same, he's still going to be a very strong pick in the top lane for a while to come. I think that in the Scuttle meta, Darius is just a great pick because he's going to be able to get priority in almost every single lane in the early game. His level 1 and level 2 is just so strong that most other top laners, maybe other than Victor, can't contest with him there at the level 1 and at the level 2. So it just allows him to get priority in lane. He's a very strong laning top lane pick, and he can do a great job at just taking over the early game in a lot of matchups. And then one thing to note about the summoner spells right now on Darius is that more and more players are just resorting to Flash Ghost instead of Flash Teleport. I think that if you are in a harder matchup or if you are in the higher elos, then Flash Teleport is still a good option, but running the Flash Ghost on Darius if you're in the lower elos or if you're just looking to play more aggressive on him is a great choice for this patch. The Ghost on Darius just makes up for a lot of the weaknesses he has in his kit. It's a pretty low cooldown summoner spell. It allows you to stick onto your target really well and not get kited as hard. So if you haven't tried out Ghost on Darius in the top lane, then it's what's doing best on him for this patch, and it is a great option right now. So for tier 2 in this patch here, a few champions that are borderline S tier right now in my opinion would be Riven, Renekton, as well as Aatrox. Riven and Renekton both got indirectly stronger last patch with the changes to Essence Reaver. They're doing great right now with that item in their build path, and it just gives them an insane spike once they do pick it up. So if you are a Riven or a Renekton player, or you're thinking about picking them up, then I think they're very strong picks for this patch. And then for Aatrox, he's a pick that has a very strong laning phase. If you can abuse Aatrox's laning phase, get ahead in the early lane and just start taking over in the side lane, then you are going to have a lot of success with him. And then one more pick that I think is pretty sleeper OP right now for this patch is the Lissandra top lane. We've seen a lot of mid lane Lissandra recently with the Aftershock. Well, top lane Lissandra with the Aftershock is also a pretty strong pick right now. She's a great pick into some of these more aggressive bruiser top lane picks like the Riven, like Yasuo, Akali. So if you're having a hard time against some of those picks in this patch, then Lissandra is a pretty good pick for 8.22. And then one more pick that I do think is pretty underrated right now as well is Swain. So similar to the Lissandra, we did see Swain brought out at Worlds, and we did see him brought out as a pretty strong, just laning top lane champion, not really going to lose lane in a lot of matchups, and he's overall just a pretty consistent top lane pick. You are going to run Grasp on the Swain top lane, and by running the Grasp, if you're in a melee matchup, you're going to be able to get a ton of Grasp procs in the laning phase. You're going to be able to stack that really well. So if you are looking for another pretty good blind pick top for this patch, then I would recommend picking up Swain. So for tier 3 or B tier for this patch, these are where a lot of the niche picks land. So you can play these champions, you can have pretty good success on them, but if you can play a tier 2 or a tier 1 pick, they're just going to be a lot more consistent than these champions here. For champions like Maokai, Nautilus, Mundo, Cho'Gath, these tank picks right now just aren't super good in the current meta. You want to be playing a champion that can at least have some sort of pressure in the early game right now, and a lot of these picks here just either can't do that or they just have bad matchups right now for 8.22. And then lastly, for tier 4 or C tier for this patch, these are your bottom of the barrel top lane picks. So I would definitely recommend staying away from these champions for this patch here. They're just not very good for the current meta. They don't have the best carry potential as a lot of the other picks in my tier list. So that is going to be all for the top lane tier list for patch 8.22. Hopefully this does help you out, and hopefully it does give you a pretty good idea of what you should be looking to pick up for this patch. So with that being said, guys, if you did enjoy this video, then be sure to drop a like and subscribe if you have yet to already. So thanks for watching, have an awesome day, and I will see you in my next video.